cold as a razor blade.
Snake Pit, and this week we've got something really cool going on. Last week marked the 40th anniversary of one of the most pivotal moments in wrestling history. Vince McMahon appearing there in Georgia Championship Wrestling, Black Saturday, as most people know it. Crazy to think that it was 40 years last year, 41 years as of this summer. And I had the pleasure and the privilege of getting to talk to not just Jake Roberts about it, but actually before I talked to Jake about it, I spoke to Gerald Brisco about it. Gerald Brisco, of course, was very heavily involved in that entire situation, as was evidenced on the episode of Dark Side of the Ring, which also came out last year. I would encourage you guys to go and check out that episode of Dark Side of the Ring if you're able to. But check out what we're doing today, because getting Gerald's perspective as kind of like the office perspective of what was going on back in those days, and then Jake's perspective as not just talent, but a booker in that territory, when all of a sudden the entire business is completely flipped on its head. I mean, it's really cool. Some really irreplaceable information from both of these guys. And I hope that you guys enjoy the 2 episodes combined for the full perspective on that super pivotal day in wrestling. A day that kind of resulted in WrestleMania, as you'll find out whenever you listen to this episode. So I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. It's a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun listening back to it as I compiled it, and we'll see you next week right here on The Snake Pit. Recently, Gerald, one of the things that's a big landmark moment in your career was covered on Dark Side of the Ring. They were talking about Black Saturday. And man, I was hoping to dig into that story a little bit more with you here today and talk about Jake and all of those experiences in Georgia. So, brother, if you're ready, we got plenty of notes.
Well, I'm ready. I mean, it's like, that Montreal thing, you talk about it and you talk about it, and then all of a sudden, you don't want to talk about it anymore. But when a friend calls and wants to talk about it, I'll talk about it. So you got one of the last interviews I'm going to do on this Black Saturday thing.
Oh man, I really appreciate it. And the Dark Side of the Ring thing was really pretty comprehensive. They told a great story. But I guess the first thing I want to ask you before we get into all of it is, do you feel like you said anything that maybe wound up on the cutting room floor, or maybe they missed some parts of the story? Does anything stick out for you?
You always do, and you can't blame them. They got what, 53 minutes or 57, whatever the time limit is on it. So things are going to end up there, and your passion is not always the passion that the producer's trying to get across. And so I'm not pointing any fingers or upset about anything. I understand timing of a show. I understand that they got to get in a certain amount of things there, but there's always a few things, the so-called blood oath. I mean, it didn't happen exactly like it was portrayed on there. Jack, people that knew my brother, he wouldn't get color for anybody. I mean, I don't care. I mean, the biggest promoters in the world asked him to do it, and he said, "I don't do that." Eddie Graham told me to never do that. As Eddie Graham told me the same thing: don't ever do that, because the way you guys sell is more than convincing. You don't need a pool of blood to lay in to convince the people that you're hurt or upset. So, that part of it, where finally Jack just, okay, Oldie, it's stupid. I mean, we're not 13-year-olds, and we're not playing cowboys and Indians here. Or Polacks and Indians, as far as Oldie was concerned there. But here's the deal. He took it. It's sort of like a blood test. If you're a diabetic, you just poke your finger and you put it up against something else. Oldie was trying to gig himself with some rusted out and he didn't have a knife in his pocket. I'm sorry to the young man that said that, but he did not have a knife in the pocket. Matter of fact, we did find a knife, but I live out on Orange Grove in Florida. I have a knife that I carried around that I peeled my oranges with, so I could see how the sweetest one. So we took that out, and Oldie, his old rusted, beat up knife, and it's dull as hell. And I got to give Oldie credit; he was digging like crazy, but he finally found a little bit there. But Jack and I ended up pricking our fingers. But that's not the story. The story is that he accuses us of breaking the oath. What oath? I mean, we're grown up to, hear a word there, on paper, is good enough. But what the deal was, he would pay us X amount of dollars for the time, and continue with his pay. and he stopped our payments and was claiming, well, the office didn't make any money. Okay, we can understand the office didn't make any money because of your booking only. So out of that also, are you taking a pay cut? Well, hell no, I'm doing all the work, so I'm not going to take a pay cut. I said, well, if you're not taking a pay cut, then screw you. You know, you're breaking your oath. So he was that was the biggest part of my complaint that they didn't get in. That Ole was the first one, and they said they had a quote from me saying Ole was the first one to break the oath on that. He broke his word first that that he would pay us, and then he quit paying us on the ground that there wasn't any money coming in the office. Well, if there's no money coming in the office, you're a good businessman and you're worried about the company not making any money. You're drawing 3 or 4 different salaries, which we didn't know at the time either. He was drawing because he was drawing. Hell, he intimidated Barnett, where Barnett was paying him for anything Ole wanted. I mean, and it was ridiculous after we dug into some of the payments Ole was getting. He was, I mean, and I don't blame Ole. Ole had a sweetheart deal there, and he was milking it for all he could get. But we reached a point where, okay, if you're making all this money, then the stockholders need to make some money too. We had stockholders that were old, and Paul Jones that was depending on that money coming in, and he wasn't getting a dime. Him and his wife was getting sick with Alzheimer's. He was on the early stages of dying itself, so they needed money for medical expenses. So they weren't getting any money, and none of the other stockholders were getting anything. So we of course lost our stipend that we agreed to with Ole, and Ole continued his pay. So Jack met with him in Baltimore. I think when Georgia were in Baltimore, it kind of invaded Vince's territory up there, and told Ole, "Hey Ole, if you're not going to take a pay cut, we're definitely going to do that. We got to make a move here." Oh, hold on. As Ole tried to talk Jack out of it, and Jack just shaking his head, "Okay, whatever." And we went on like that. So that was the biggest thing for me that they did not cover, because your word means a lot. And he said my word, I went back on my word when we weren't the first one to go back on the word. That was the biggest thing that I got. And as we're talking, I'm old and my memory will start jogging to more of the stuff that I felt that they left out.
Yeah, it's, more than anything, I like the idea of this being kind of like a companion piece for that
Yeah.
Dark Side of the Ring, where we're really kind of going to dig in and hopefully get some of the story that was missed on that Dark Side of the Ring so fans can really get the full blown perspective. We'll start to talk about that here in a minute. But before we do, it's become really customary here on the show that anytime we've got a guest host, I ask them about their experiences around Jake. So, what can you tell us about first meeting Jake, experiences around him, etc.?
We traveled up and down the road here in Florida and the Carolinas and Georgia together, and the territories that we were running up in Ohio, Michigan, and West Virginia. Jake and I always were friends. I mean, I don't know if it goes back because I was good friends with Grizzly when I was first starting in the business, as was Jack, Grizzly being Jake's father, Grizzly Smith. And in Oklahoma, he was one of the guys really that got me watching weekly professional wrestling. They had one of the bloodiest riots they've been. The Kentuckians with Grizzly Smith and Big Boy Brown was the Kentuckians. We went to Kentucky, two big old boys that wore overalls against the masked assassins, Jody Hamilton and Tom Renesso. It was the biggest bloodbath feud I'd ever seen in my life, and it got me every Saturday night. And back in Oklahoma, that wrestling didn't come on until 12 o'clock at night, so you had to stay up real late to watch it, or as you got home from being out late, you were watching it. I was a schoolboy at the time, and it really got me hooked on wrestling. Along with my hero growing up, Danny Hodge was on there all the time. So, but yeah, so anyway, watching Grizzly, then meeting Jake, having a chance to travel around the road with Jake was a unique experience. I mean, we enjoyed our bad habits, smoking a little cannabis here and there, or a lot of cannabis there and here, however you want to put it. But we enjoyed each other's company. I love listening to Jake's stories. Jake's stories on the road was like Jake's promos. You just listen to them. I mean, you just bent over and you listen to them. Jake always had that unique ability to spin a story where he got your attention. So the road trip with Jake were really, really unique. I don't know if Jake ever told you this story, but when we were going through some problems in Georgia, and we were looking for a booker, I was on Barnett. I had a couple Gary Hart and a couple other guys I was wanting to bring in as booker and relieve Ole of his duty because business wasn't sucking. We're doing really good. On the surface, it looked like we were doing good because we're hitting those 3 states, which nobody had hit in years and years, and we're doing bang out, sell out business up there. I was doing the promotion up there, and so we're making money. But the Georgia in general was sucking, and so we're looking for bookers. I was working Florida full time. Jake was working Georgia full time. I go up there, and they have me going over Jake in a match. And we'd talk to Jim Barnett. We being my brother Jack and myself talked to Jim Barnett about a couple of Gary Hart was one of them, and Jake was the other about being a booker. And well, yeah, but you can't let anybody know what you're doing. So I'm working with Jake. We're there. You couldn't talk to him in the dressing room because every ear in the dressing room was listening to what Jack, because they knew we were unhappy with the way the direction that Georgia Championship Wrestling was going. So couldn't talk in the dressing room or anywhere like that. Or be seen out. So we're in the ring, 15, 16,000 people in the Omni that night. And I'm supposed to go over Jake. So we're working along, and I finally said, "Hey Jake, would you like to be booker?" "What do you mean? Would you like to be booker and Ole and this territory and replace Ole or work with Ole?" "Well, I don't want to work with Ole, but I'd be glad to replace him." I said, "Okay, well, have your word? We'll talk later on." I said, "You got my word." I said, "Well, DDT me beat me. But you're supposed to go over. You're supposed to go." I said, "I don't care. You're the booker. I'm putting you over tonight." So Jake DDT me, and 1, 2, 3, he won the match. We got back there. Of course, Ole hit the fan. "What the hell is going on out there, Brisco? You're supposed to be. Are you coming back with Soto? Blah blah blah." Said, "No, we changed our mind out there. It was going so good. I felt that Jake should go over." And Ole threw up his hands. Whatever, he knew he couldn't win that battle. So yeah, so I made Jake the booker in the ring and changed the finish where he beat me. I mean, how many times does that happen?
Man, what an experience for Jake. Hell of a night for him there in the Omni.
Yeah. So
Man,
that's my main event story with Jake Roberts.
that is so cool. And that is actually I was gonna play that clip of Jake telling that exact story. It's from February 5th, 1984.
Well, play it so I can hear it because I never had that. I'd like to hear Jake.
Yeah, let's get Jake's account.
Sunday, the Omni always ran on Sunday. It was a big deal in Atlanta. And I look on the card, and I'm booked against Jerry Brisco. I'm
That's
like,
a good
holy
opponent.
shit, Jerry Brisco. What the hell am I doing wrestling him? I don't need to be doing jobs already. That's what I was thinking. So I'm kind of antsy about it, waiting to talk to him, and he's nowhere to be found. The matches start. We're on 4th. He's nowhere to be found. Second match is over. He's nowhere to be found.
Oh, Lord.
Third match is in the ring. And just as it's over, I catch a glimpse of him running to get dressed. Well, they had me go to the ring. I went to the ring. The bell's ringing for him. He finally comes running out to the ring. We get in the ring. We start wrestling around, blah, blah, blah. Nothing, just doing our stuff. Then we build the match, got the heat going. He started making his comeback and told me to cut him off. And I'm like, cut you off? Because I thought he was taking it home. And I cut him off, and he said, DDT. What?
All right.
So I hook him, and I DDT him and cover him. And he says, do you want the job as booker? And I said, hell yeah. And he goes, don't take anything less than 100% control. Okay.
Wow.
And that's how it happened.
There it was. That's Jake's account.
That's awesome. But the reason he couldn't find me, I was in discussion with Barnett how I was going to pull this thing off. And Barnett and I were secluded back in the back office there where nobody could find us because I wanted his attention, didn't want any interruptions. So that's the reason Jake couldn't find me. But that's a true story, man. Jake was nervous as hell, and I knew Jake wasn't really happy. He just come in. We promised him a push, and I'm coming in, and all of a sudden, I'm going over him. Well, number one, that wasn't right. And that's one thing I think you can look back with my brother and I. We were totally unselfish in the ring when it comes to that. We didn't care about winning and losing. We cared about drawing money. We knew that we would be coming back and we could put ourselves in a good position the next week and get that win back somehow, and big deal, you're going to lose to one of the top stars in the United States at the time, Jake Roberts. So it wasn't a big deal to me to do it. And Jack and I had talked about it, and I told Jack what I was going to do, and he really liked it because it was something that wasn't done very often, but yeah, that was a Jake. I'm never will forget Jake. Oh, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm sure. Beat me. You're the booker, but I got that out of him right before I let him beat me. Are you taking the job? If he would have said no, I can't. Then all right, I'm beating your ass.
Now, was part of having Jake pin you also kind of to go up Ole's ass sideways a little?
Exactly.
Oh, man, great stuff, and really cool to hear both of your accounts of the story. And I am curious too, Jake, from a worker standpoint, would you say that you were pretty impressed with him and his work rate?
Oh yeah, I'm highly impressed. I always thought Jake was one of the best damn workers. I mean, set the promos aside, because I don't think there's too many people in our business ever that could cut a promo like Jake. But his work inside, whether he was babyface or heels, and he was one of those talented guys that could work either side of the coin. It didn't matter to him. Just put me in a position that I could draw you some money, and that I knew that if we treated Jake Roberts the right way, we could draw money with Jake.
Yep, and him being part of the Legion of Doom down there, the original Legion of Doom, I would say that was a money angle, and the stuff he was doing with Ronnie Garvin, man, a fun era in wrestling.
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, we look back, and I mean, and honestly, these kids today will look back and say, man, we had a great time, and good for them, because they are. But in our mind, the old school guys like you and me and Jake and some of these others, what are they doing? It's hard to understand, but you can't criticize the money that they're drawing now. And so more power to them. I hope in 20 years, how many years it's been since that clip, that they had as good a time as my brother and I and Jake and the guys in the business.
Yeah, it's incredible, but that's 40 years ago this year
Wow.
that you and Jake had that match,
Wow.
and the Black Saturday happened.
Damn, Jake is old.
Man, I'm glad I get to get these stories from you guys, because it's incredible hearing them. So the other guy I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll start to talk about Black Saturday a little bit more, is Ted DiBiase. He had come into the territory during this period of time. And man, Ted, you could make the argument, was one of the best wrestlers on the face of the planet during this era. And here he is in a pretty small territory with Georgia. What do you remember about being around Ted at this time?
Well, Teddy's another one of those guys that I had the privilege of knowing for a long, long time. Working in West Texas a lot, where Teddy grew up and everything. So I was around him and his father, and so it was always a pleasure to be with Teddy. And I got a great story with Teddy, as I do just about all the guys. Teddy would moaning and groaning. He had a cauliflower ear. I don't know if he ever told you this story. He had a cauliflower ear. So he was going to go to a doctor's appointment. Jack, my brother Jack, and I were amateur wrestlers. We dealt with cauliflower ear. I knew how to drain a cauliflower ear, and so I said, Teddy, don't pay $60 to a doctor. I said, we can drain your ear. And I mean, that baby was out here. And see, he still got the remnants of it now. That baby was sticking out here, squishy as could be. So I knew it'd be easy to drain. So let's go by one of the drugstores, pick up a syringe and some cotton and some peroxide to sterilize the alcohol to sterilize, burn like hell after you poke the hole in there. And I said, let's do that, and we'll go back to your apartment and drain your ear, because Ted's wife was out of town or something. So we were going to stay there because we had an early, like a 6 o'clock plane the next morning. He lived out by the airport. So he said, you guys can stay with us. So we get to his apartment. We go get all the materials and everything. We get to his apartment. His apartment's locked and the keys are inside. His wife is gone. So we had to break into his own apartment. We break it and knock out in the kitchen window, get in the damn apartment, get in there, get a couple of cubes of ice, put up on his ear. Okay, it should be ready now. So I stick the needle in there, and Teddy's crying like a little baby. I mean, I heard that, Teddy, shut up. Jack giving him hell too. I drained it. Man, it's a big syringe about this big, full of that old red pussy like blood that comes out of the cauliflower ear. So, but we'd forgot one thing. We'd forgot the little cast. So when you drain an ear, if you don't put a little cast on it, and all that is some gauze and some sticky stuff that'll turn it hard. We forgot to pick that part up. So I said, just put this cloth up again. I put some ice. I put this cloth, and maybe it won't drain back in there. But sure enough, the next morning it drained back in there. And he looked, he started screaming early in the morning. You hear, yeah, look by here. I thought you drained this stuff. And he went through all that pain last night. So what a big ass baby Ted DiBiase was over draining cauliflower. So that's the deal with Teddy. That's how he got that big ass cauliflower. And they walked around. He was real proud of it after a while because getting cauliflower here was a big deal.
Right. It was like a rite of passage, right?
Yeah.
Man, I cannot wait to ask Ted about it. There's a reason he hasn't relayed that story to me. So.
Yeah, because there's a baby.
All right, guys, we're doing another break so we can talk about one of my favorite sponsors that we have ever had here on the Snake Pit. Of course, you guys know already, I'm talking about Mando. Fall is here. It's crisp air. It's football season. Everything is starting to kind of cool off a little bit out there. However, we know that doesn't mean that you're going to be sweat free. You're still out there working your butt off, whether it's taking care of yard work, whether it's taking care of the house, whether it's out there running around with your kids. Yeah, dude, you're going to be sweaty. Don't let body odor sideline you. Mando deodorant plus sweat control is for real working guys. It's formulated to stop odor before it starts, and it doesn't mask odor with overwhelming fragrance. So you can tackle anything from the job site to tailgating with confidence. Don't mask it. Mando it. So look, you guys know I've been singing the praises of Mando for a very long time. My wife loves them. I love them. My wife is a huge fan. Every time I put on the new Mando deodorant that I've got, which is in that bourbon leather scent, sit down next to her on the couch, and all of a sudden she's snuggling up a little bit closer. I smell better for longer, and it's all due to Mando. I'm telling you, these guys are a product that I truly believe in and intend to use for many, many years moving forward. And we've all heard, like the companies, everybody says that they've got the best whatever. And it's no exception in the world of deodorant or male grooming. Well, let me tell you, Mando is the real deal. There is no fluff here. There's no BS. There's no silly marketing stuff going on. Mando's very straightforward. What they tell you is what it is, and the benefits are unbelievable. They offer clinical strength sweat control. Just one swipe, and that's it. You're good to go. This isn't your typical deodorant. It's clinical strength, 2 times better at controlling sweat than the standard. It controls both sweat and odor for up to 72 hours, and after just 12 hours, underarm sweat was reduced by 92%. This stuff seriously works. This isn't just normal deodorant. This is deodorant re-engineered to stop odor before it starts. It doesn't just mask odor, it prevents it. 100% of study participants experience all-day odor protection. Think about that. 100% of people agree that they got all-day odor protection by using Mando. Not to mention, they use premium ingredients. Unlike other deodorants, which are loaded up with chemicals, Mando uses only the best, like gentle mandelic acid, to keep you fresh and dry. And it doesn't just tackle odor, it tackles sweat. Mando's new deodorant plus sweat control stick gives you double the protection you need. No more worrying about sweat stains or those embarrassing pit rings, just all-day freshness and dryness. If you're ready to jump in and give this thing a try, Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like the mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer to our listeners, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code SNAKE at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. Again, it's shopmando.com, shopmando.com. Please support our show. Make sure you let them know that we sent you there, and you're going to get 20% off site-wide at shopmando.com plus free shipping. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. Oh man, that's great. And man, he and Tommy Rich had a hell of a feud during that era
Did they ever?
in Georgia, and they did that Mr. R angle and some stuff with Brad Armstrong, Bullet Bob Armstrong. Just man, what a great generation.
You
of
know
wrestling.
how Brad got over. You know the story with Brad, right? You know,
What's
Brad, how Brad really became a star there in Georgia. Brad was starting to get over. He needed a push, and this shows you here another unselfish moment of Jack Brisco. Jack's the world champion, so Jack said, "Let me take that kid," and so because he loved Bob so much, and he loved Brad a lot, and so they went out and they had a match, and it was like a 15-minute match. They were setting Brad up for a title match with Jack later on. This was a non-title TV match, of course, on TBS, and so Jack out there, and I mean he's putting this kid over like the guys Harley Race or Dory Funk Jr. I mean he's putting him over. That match ended up having the highest numbers of any segment on WTBS history for years and years and years. I don't know how many years that record had, but that immediately made Brad Armstrong that he was able to go that 15-minute draw with the world champion. And 2 weeks later, the Omni had 17,000 people in there, sold out with Jack Brisco and Brad Armstrong in his first title match there. So what a night that was.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea that was part of Brad Armstrong's history. That's great.
Yeah.
Man, well, Ted all the time sings the praises of you and your brother on our podcast. Everybody's got a pod, and as a matter of fact, we were just talking about your brother about 10 minutes before I got on here with you because I was telling him how I'm about to record with you, and he said, "Boy, Jack and Jerry, two of the best ever." And he said Jack Brisco had one of the best matches I've ever seen against Dory Funk Jr.
Oh, that match! I mean, that match should be one of those matches where if you're breaking into the business, you should be a rule that you have to sit down and you watch this 60, 40, 45, 45, 60-minute match, whatever the length of it is, and study that match before you ever step foot in the ring, because those two were technicians. They had the magic ingredient with each other. People really don't know what it is, and the talent really don't know what it is, but you just know when you step in the ring with certain guys, you have that magic with. And Dory and Jack had that magic. That match was actually one of the first ones in a long, long time. I want to say first ever, but one in the first long time that's ever syndicated around the market, around the United States. They ended up showing that in like 25 or 35 different markets across the United States. And Jack and Dory were only working this was pre-title, they're only working Florida and Amarillo at the time before this match hit. Then when this match hit nationwide, they were booked in every territory in the world after that. So just off that 60-minute match they had. But that's a classic match that everybody should watch. I'm sure that's one that Teddy saw. And I know Teddy saw hundreds of them too.
Well, now I'm gonna go hunt that match down. I'm sure it's on YouTube, and I'd love to see it. Well, let's get into the whole Black Saturday situation. Vince bought Southwest Championship Wrestling's time slot from the Blanchard family in 1983 as Joe Blanchard's territory folded up. Do you remember if there was any reaction to this acquisition? Like, what was the general temperature of everybody around wrestling?
I remember really that, and you know, at that time it wasn't really thought of as something really earth-shattering. But Eddie Graham, the brilliant promoter down here in Florida, Eddie knew that was going to be the key to something in our business that none of the promoters at the NWA couldn't control, and that's cable TV. Cable TV is going to be the demise of this business. Not an individual, not anybody else. Cable TV. And so when that happened, and nobody knew how long the USA market, USA network was going to last, because those networks were popping up. I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but networks like that were popping up and going out of business, you know, right and left. So all of them were trying to be Ted Turner, basically. And Ted had that magic about him that he made it work, but a lot of them didn't. So when Vince pulled in and into that time slot there, it wasn't really like, oh man, this is the first nail in the coffin. There weren't thoughts like that. It's just, you know, what's going on. And But it's a few guys. Eddie Graham, being around Eddie Graham, gave my brother and I so much insight to beyond the normal talent mindset that Eddie would give us, and teach us the inside, the goings and comings of the business. And Eddie, I got to sing Eddie's praises. He's the one that really taught Jack and I how to be businessmen in professional wrestling. He could kind of see what was coming, but a lot of the other guys were just totally blind on what was going on.
Man, Eddie Graham, everybody always puts him over as being one of the sharpest guys ever in wrestling. And for him to kind of be able to project that and see that, okay, Vince is looking like he's making moves in cable and, trying to capture these television opportunities, like that could be the demise of wrestling. Pretty impressive that he was able to kind of foresee all that.
Yeah, he was, and he was like, there was an article in the Tampa Tribune that somebody posted not long ago on a Facebook page that before any of these SLs ever come across, Eddie was saying, it's not the promoter next door that you've got to worry about. It's that one that 2,000 miles away that you don't know who the hell he is, that gets TV, that gets his cable TV. And Eddie was singing the praises and the demise of the territories back before cable TV really expanded. So he saw it actually. He saw the concept, what was going on, and he knew that was going to be the downfall of it. But yeah, Eddie had that one eye, and Eddie cocked that head to the side, and you could just see that everything churning inside his head. And man, you knew you needed to sit down and start listening to what this man was going to say, because he was a wealth of information.
Was there ever a time, because Vince is also acquiring a lot of talents across territories. So between that and these television opportunities he's acquiring, was there ever a time when you yourself thought, like, geez, maybe I ought to go see if I can work in New York?
Yeah, well, I you know what? Honestly, neither Jack and I had any desire to go to New York. I mean, Jack was approaching the end of his career, and Jack wasn't really wanting to work anything. Jack kind of hung on that last year just to kind of help position me, and because they knew I had a couple of years left. But I like a lot of people went to college. I had an exit plan coming in this business, man. I was 10 years. I was going to get out. I was going to finish my last year of college and be a teacher or coach. That was my lifelong ambition, to be a coach, a high school or college wrestling coach. And so I had that exit plan. I'd already been in business 15 or 16 years, whatever it was at that time. But I saw guys leaving. We're starting to lose a lot of guys. We'd lost Sarge. We'd lost, several other guys that made the jump up there. But the one that really, really, to me, was the tipping point of the whole buyout deal. And Vince wasn't coming in and buying these guys out. He was stealing these guys. He was offering them good money. And, guys, like guys up at Vern, what he stole all my talent. But, if you've been paying these guys right to begin with and treating them right, and there's no way if you're making good money on a territory where you're working 4 or 5 times a week, that you're going to go and work 100 days in a row for Vince McMahon unless he's paying you the money. So that's the reason guys were jumping to Vince McMahon, because he was not only giving them opportunity to be nationwide, but he's giving them that opportunity to make that huge money that they weren't making other places. So, but as I was saying, the guys were going left and right. Hogan and all these guys were already up there. All of a sudden, when we lost Hot Rod Roddy Piper to Vince, that's when Jack and I were making a car ride somewhere. And Roddy had come to our hotel room the night, a couple of weeks before, and asked us not to tell anybody, but he had made his deal with Vince. And we started, because Roddy was hot in Georgia. He was our bread and butter in Georgia. And Georgia spawned off to Michigan, Ohio, and West Virginia, where we're selling out every 2 weeks, like clockwork. Roddy was also over in the Carolinas, where Jack and I were working steady. So that was another straw there that that made that territory so phenomenal during that time frame there. If you go back to Starrcade and look at the card, there are probably 13 to 14 WWE Hall of Famers on that Starrcade card. Mm-hmm. And out of all those guys that left, the Valentine, the Slaughters, the one who left, Roddy Piper, was actually the tipping point. That's when Jack and I got in the car later and said, "Man, we got to think of something. Let's think of our exit plan. Let's think how we can get out of this bill."
How important do you think that the superstation was to the success of the Georgia territory? Could it have been as
Oh,
successful without it?
well, the Georgia proper, it would have been. I mean, because you had your main TV and you had a powerful TV, and plus back in those days you had what you called your syndicated TV too. You had your Columbus, Georgia TV, individual TV. You had your Macon TVs. You had your Savannah TVs. So off that Georgia TV, we would syndicate our show where it was all over Georgia. So for Georgia's sake, it was good because it was a new station and everybody wanted to watch new, and they had bought the right to Andy and Bayberry, which was at the time, it sounds funny, but it was the #1 show in the United States, in Bayberry, USA, whatever the hell the name was, until Georgia Championship Wrestling came on. All of a sudden, Georgia Championship Wrestling started drawing bigger numbers because of the talent Barnett was bringing in. So I don't think the cable really had that much to do with the attraction of the territory of Georgia, but it did for our expansion. And the only reason we were able to go into this Michigan, Ohio, and West Virginia, it was a dead area. It was a dead spot. No promoters were in there. She could gone in there and burnt the place up and walked out of there. One thing Ole was really right about, and he said they don't know what how the business operates. Well, you had to pay your money in advance. I go in and try to set up a building. I'd like to work with you guys, but I'm gonna need every bit of my money up front because we were burned by the last wrestling promoter. So we had to dig into our well. We had to dig into that till and pay all that money out. But buildings, after you rent them 2 or 3 times, they begin to trust you and see that you're operating your business above board the way business should be operated in. And those advance charges went away because you usually drew enough money and they trusted that you were going to draw enough money that night to pay all your expenses. So you didn't have all those advance expenses like you did in the beginning.
Mm.
And Odie, you always use that as well, they were dumbasses. They didn't know what the expenses to work in these. Our only expenses were getting guys there. That first night usually paid for all those expenses that we did. And then we had another 6, 7 nights to make the profit for the company, which we did.
Wow.
So that the cable helped us advance and start a slow migration out of Georgia into territories. And Barnett was really strict. You cannot run a town where there's a promoter currently running. So we get those big sacks of where cable TV was penetrating, and we had to really select here, around, and it was really around Pittsburgh because that little peninsula of panhandle of West Virginia goes up, and I mean any TV you have is going to bleed over in the Pittsburgh area almost. So we had to be very careful of the wheelings and little towns in West Virginia we were running. So you had to be very careful that there wasn't any other promoters there because Jim was very loyal to NWA at that time, and we had to really be select on the towns that we were running, which was a group effort to do that.
What can you tell us about the relationship between Georgia Championship Wrestling and Turner? Would you say that Turner was really passionate about it?
I'd say Turner was overly passionate about it. There's stories, and we're not the only ones, but we did. I think it was 101 Techwood Avenue, the old GTS, WGTS TV studio on Saturday morning, which made it horrendous because you're in Atlanta, Georgia on Friday night, and you're young. You want to go out and experience Atlanta, Georgia, but you had to be up at 6:30 the next morning, be at TV at 7:00 in the morning to do our TV. So it was brutal at times. I mean, the Dusties and the Pipers and the Briscoes, we all be out partying. We'd all stumble into the studio about 7:00 in the morning, still hung over and still half of them unbathed, And so it was a really difficult deal. But so many of us in there. We're dressing in the halls. One time Turner came down, and he knew Jack and I, and he knew our college background. He saw us dressed in the hallways. He, come here, guys. He said, "This is my office. You can use it as long as you don't trash it. So when you leave here, make sure it looks just like when you come in here." So he allowed us to use his personal office during our TV taping times. And we made sure nobody else went in there. We made sure it was spick and span when we went out. But he had a passion for the wrestlers. He respected every one of the wrestlers, whether they were the first guys on the card or doing the job for the top talent. He respected everybody and treated us with total class. So I got nothing but good things to say about Turner.
Now, as a shareholder for the company, you're balancing duties with being a wrestler as well. What would your day-to-day activities look like as a shareholder on top of being a wrestler?
Well, mostly, and at that time, Jim Barnett was a hands-on owner. Jim was doing everything as for the business side of it. The talent side of it, of course, we were recruiting talent to come there. Everywhere we go, Jack was coming off his title win, so we're fortunate enough to be booked in all these different territories. We'd see guys like Rocky Johnson. Rocky was serving up in Portland, Oregon. Guys, I need to get out here. Can you get up? So Jack got him booked in Georgia and then to Florida. So we were out on the road scouting talent, and then we would brainstorm with Jim and whoever the booker. And it wasn't always the booker there. Sometimes it's Bill, sometimes it's other guy. And we also had one of Gary Hart in there. So we'd sit down and brainstorm who how to book our TV and stuff like that. So it was kind of a shotgun effect. You did what was needed to do in a small company like that.
Apparently Vince had come to Turner previously trying to buy the time slot, and Turner refused. What did you make of that? Just, was his judgment clouded by his love for wrestling, or did he have some kind of a personal issue?
Well, we were certainly aware of that. Who personal issue, Vince or Turner?
Did Turner maybe have a personal issue with Vince where he
No,
just didn't
I
wanna
don't
go?
think he really even knew that much about Vince at the time, but he was so loyal and so infatuated with Georgia Championship Wrestling. He loved the live wrestling studio. He loved that old school TV. I mean, that's obvious, his station was built on the old classic TV shows too. He saw us as one of those old school shows. And he knew what the New York group was, bells and whistles and all that stuff. And he was attracted so heavily into Georgia Championship Wrestling that in my opinion, he didn't. That's what he wanted to be with old school TV. He didn't care about the perception of bells and whistles. He just didn't care.
You talked to us a little bit about the circumstances surrounding your decision to sell to Vince, and if fans want to hear more about that, I encourage you to go listen to that Dark Side of the Ring episode, so you guys can really kind of get the full context on it. But did the deal come together with Vince pretty easily, or was there a lot of back and forth, before you came to an agreement?
Oh, there was a lot of back and forth. I mean, we met, and that's the amazing thing about it. And as you know, in the wrestling business, if you can keep a secret from people in our wrestling business, man, you have accomplished a lot. And Jack and I, we knew who our friends were, and even our closest friends, like Roddy Piper, when Roddy made his decision to sell to jump, and that's what made us, like I said before, make that decision to sell. But we'd gone in and we made a couple of mistakes along the way. I mean, this wasn't just a deal to go to Vince Bank. We come in and we were going to, like I said, we tried to make Jake the booker. Well, we wanted to make Gary Hart the booker and drop Ole because business was not great. It was great in like I said, in those outer areas because it was a brand new area for us. It was great there, granted, and we were drawing money like crazy. But in Georgia, and the reason, and one of your questions, I saw we had such a plethora of young talent, of young, good-looking guys. You asked, well, why did you have all that talent pool like that? Barnett knew what it took. I mean, Barnett ran Australia for 5 to 10 years. He made that company down there thrive on bringing in fresh talent every 3 or 4 months, bringing in young, athletic guys, and that's what Jim brought that same MO when he came into Georgia. I'm gonna bring in young, athletic guys for our TV. So that's really what made it go there. So what was that? What was the question I was trying to get?
Oh, it was, let me get back to it. It was, the deal, it came together fairly
Oh yeah.
easily.
So it wasn't an easy deal. Even when we finally made the call, and the unique thing about it, we called Vince from Jimmy Crockett Jr.'s office because Roddy Piper had been hurt. And Roddy kept saying Roddy Piper was a dear friend of ours. he had his fingers slashed when he went to pick up a table. They didn't file the inside of that little metal down, and he severed all of his fingers. We had heard rumors that he was going to lose his fingers. So everybody were doing TV interviews at Crockett Promotion, and everybody wanted to know about Piper. We had no answer, so we walk in, and Jimmy called Vince and find out if Piper's okay. That's all. Just you don't have to share your secrets with him, but just find out if Piper's okay. I ain't calling that son of a bitch. I ain't calling him. Jack said, do you mind if I call him? Jimmy said, here, go ahead and call him. So Jack picked up. Jimmy had his number called. Howard Finkel answered the phone, put Jack right to Vince. Vince started questioning Jack where he was at. And Jack said, I'm at TV doing it here in Crockett's office. Well, you can't talk now. He said, all you got to do is just say yes or no. Or would you guys be interested in meeting with me? And Jack said, sure. And he said, well, call us when you leave TV and we'll work something out. So we thought it was just going to be an offer to come up there and work, not. So Jack got on the phone. He said, hey, I'd love to have you guys up there. However, are you guys interested in selling your territory? So we actually made the call right in front of Jimmy Crockett, we called it. But we'd also done some due diligence because, like I said, we didn't do everything perfect. We made a lot of mistakes leading into it. We tried to do a little takeover before. And in our bylaws, and it's a portion that we did study our bylaws and got caught on this. When you called a stockholders meeting, you had to say the reason why you're calling that stockholders meeting. Well, we couldn't call a stockholders meeting to say we're going to vote Ole out because you got to do that like a month in advance. I'd given Ole too much time to call everybody else and say, hey, the Briscoes are high on pot or whatever, and don't listen to them. They don't know what they're doing. So we tried to do it without stating the status of the reason why we're having. So that meeting got called off, and that it cost both Jack and I a lot of money with the lawyers and stuff like that. So, we kind of dropped it for a while and kind of let that flame go down a little bit so we wouldn't be thinking about it. So finally, we knew from there. We didn't know Ole Anderson was a stockholder at the time. We just thought Ole was an employee. Ole, and that's what really saved us. So, because when we made the sale, the big deal was it wasn't offered to anybody else, but we'd read those stockholder bylaws when we made the mistake about not calling it, and it said in there that before you can sell your stock, you got to offer it to a existing stockholder. And so as we're going along, all of a sudden we find out Ole Anderson owned 10% of the territory. He bought it from Bill Watts, and I talked to Bill Watts not long ago, right before this dark side thing come on, and I thanked Bill. I said, Bill, if it hadn't been for you, that whole deal would have blown up right in our face again. And so he said, well, you're welcome. So anyway, when we found out that, we offered Jimmy Crockett, we offered it to Barnett, we offered it to an existing stockholder, we offered it to his business partner, Jim Oates, and we offered it to Paul Jones. 3 guys that we knew that wouldn't buy it. So we fulfilled our obligation of pursuing an insider stock sale, and it didn't go through. So then that opened us up to sell. We went to Jimmy Crockett, went to Joe and Elliot Murnick and Carl Murnick, who was running Virginia and Raleigh for Crockett. Offered them the same deal, would you be willing? And they let us check it out. So they would call Ole, they're wanting too much money for it. It's not worth that. It's not worth it. That was always it. It's not worth that kind of money if they're offering. They're trying to rip you guys off. One more. Why are you hanging on to them? How are you making all this money? So anyway, we finally made that. We left TV. We called Crockett. He said, when you guys are, we called Vince, when you guys are off, and Jack looked at the calendar. We're off next Thursday. He said, how about I fly you up to New York, and we sit down, we talk about it, and then it'll be 100% private. Nobody will know if you and I ever talked to. We agreed to meet with Vince up there. So that's how we went up to Vince, went up to New York, met in LaGuardia Airport, one of those little Delta or Eastern at the time executive rooms that they used to rent out for meetings and everything. Met in there for a couple hours. Really liked Vince and what he had to say and his vision on the business, because he kind of laid out his vision of the business. which are really some of the same stuff that he was laying out with what Jack and I visualized in our mind too. So we knew that if we sold, we were selling to a guy that kind of had the like vision of what we thought the business should be eventually. And I mean, he went into detail, and the way he went into detail, 99% of it all came to fruition. The guy had a vision, he stuck with it. So then we get back, we set up the meeting. So then we got to contact our attorney. So we contact our attorney. He set up a meeting, and then it's all done through attorneys at that time there. So they contact Vince's attorney. So we set up a time to meet in Atlanta. We go in, we dissect the bylaws. I mean, just dissect them down to the last little syllable and a word, and to make sure that what we did had no legal boundary where we could get called back on it. Oh, and like I said, Odie tried to sue and stop the sale, but he had done screwed up when he bought Bill Watts' stock without it being offered to Jack or I or to anybody else in the company. And so we had to, after we agreed with Vince, we could get the 51%. Then we had to make calls and make sure they're sworn to secrecy on the other stockholders that we knew we could count on. Of course, Barnett was no issue at all, and Oak was no problem at all. The big deal would come to Paul Jones, the old school promoter there that had been the figurehead promoter there forever. And so we got to Paul, and Paul was a former college athlete, and his wife a former collegiate athlete also. She really liked Jack and I. I mean, the Joan, because of our college background, our athletic background, and because she really respected us and liked us. And they weren't making any money. I mean, it had been years since they'd seen a dividend check. And we're getting to the point here now where Ole, by his own admission, business was sucking, and we couldn't bring in the quality of talent that we were able to bring in before the stars from other places where we're going. So we were having to depend on our own talent. That's why Tommy Rich got so hot, because we had to focus on Tommy Rich and build him to be a star. So we weren't really making it. Been, like I said, it been years since the Joneses had any deal. So we got their proxy. So that hit it, man. That hit us well over 50, and I think even like 61% we had at that time. So we knew even if one guy dropped out, we'd still have the 51%. You know, as long as Joneses didn't drop out, we'd be cool on it. So they agreed to it. Then we sat down in hours and hours, and I got to tell you, Linda McMahon was the best negotiator I ever sat across the table with. She was the one really doing the negotiation. And Vince kind of sat there and just shook his head and said, yeah, whatever she said. You know. So it was really Linda who did the negotiation for her. But the bottom line is we were able to contact all these people, do all this legwork, fly in and out of Atlanta 3 or 4 times with Vince and Linda. And nobody, I mean, nowadays, I mean, you couldn't get by with you that. I don't know how you could do it, but nobody in the business knew what was coming down. And that's what I think I'm most proud of, that we were able to keep that so under the table for a period of probably 6 to 7 months before we made the deal.
Man, you said it earlier in the podcast. This is a tough business to keep a secret in. So well done, especially a secret that big. Holy smokes. Incredible. Now, did you know before Vince came on TV and made his infamous appearance on WTBS that was part of his plan?
Well, we knew what it was. We knew what his plan was because we, sitting there during negotiation, we're laying out. I mean, he's laying out his plan, and we gained his confidence. Where, of course, he knew we had everything to lose, and if it would have got out, we would have been more mincemeat than he would have been. I mean, the NWA was our bread and butter, and our stock. We own part of Florida, and we own part of Georgia. Through just blessings that we had to cash at the time it was available, and we were able to jump on it. But he laid out his vision, how he wanted to go nationwide and everything. And we helped him. George Scott was the first booker. We called George Scott from our final meeting there, and we helped him sign George Scott on. He was wanting Gordon Soley so bad, and Gordon, I gotta give Gordon credit. He was loyal to the NWA and loyal to the Georgia Championship, and Gordon said, "No, I'm not going to do it." And I also got to give Gordon credit, or Gordon didn't share that phone call with anybody else until after it was over with, And Gordon could have easily broke the deal right there. Well, the Briscoes are called. Because it was a week after we signed the agreement that Vince showed up in Atlanta. It was a couple of weeks after that. So we're very fortunate that it didn't get out. And I hate the fact that Ole used it. Well, they did it when my mother was dying.
Mm-hmm.
And that really paints us. We didn't know Ole's mother. We knew that she was ill, and we knew, but the deal, any businessman knows when the final deal gets done, you do it then, or you don't. You miss out on the opportunity. So that day come, and unfortunately, it was a time where Ole's mother had passed away. We felt bad about it, and called Ole and expressed our condolences. But that wasn't meant to be the timing or anything that we did. It just coincided with an unfortunate date.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he lost a member of his family, but here you and Jack, who've invested money yourselves, and you guys are trying to take care of your families.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's you've got to do what you've got to do. Now, when Black Saturday came and went, I know that you mentioned on the program that yourself and your brother received some threatening phone calls. Were these calls from fans, or were they from some wrestlers and promoters as well?
Both.
Wow. Okay. Anybody, any notable names stick out as far as a wrestler who may have called and threatened
Well,
you?
Paul Jones, the wrestler. We met Paul Jones. Paul Jones, the wrestler, is kind of the one, and Louise and the deal where we said Paul said he's putting a hitman out on us, and Louise. They asked Louise, "Do you think?" And she said, "No, Ole would have done it." So, she's right. I don't think Ole would have, but it's good fodder. I mean, Paul Jones called my brother Jack. You guys watch out where you go, who you're hanging with, because supposedly in 3 days you'll be dead. But one thing, Joe Laurinaitis, Animal on Road Warrior, we did our duty. We finished up every date that we were booked for Georgia and every date that we were booked for Crockett, and did jobs. Did put everybody over. We're working with the Road Warriors in Cleveland, the old Cleveland Auditorium. It's on the stage, and we're on the Road Warriors. They're on one side of the stage. We're on the other. Well, the Road Warriors gives a come here, I got to talk to you. So, Jack, what the hell? So he motioned, we go back behind 3 sets of curtains all the way to the back end up. He said, I got to tell you guys something. He said, you guys have always treated us good. We have much respect for you as you do for us. And then he said, but Ole's offered everybody in the dressing room $5,000 if he'll break your arm or leg. We kind of looked. He said, well, what do you who we're working with? What do you guys tell them? They said, we don't want no part of it. We respect you guys. You guys have been too good to us, and we appreciate that. And he said, I got to tell you, if you're ever in the ring with Buzz Sawyer before you leave, watch it, because he said he would do it. And we kind of laughed. Well, good luck on that, Buzz. So Joe, who I trusted 100%, and I think he had no reason to lie to me in any way, shape, or form. I do believe that happened, and of course, Buzz isn't around to verify his end of it, so I'm not going to bash a dead man. But it wouldn't shock me that he did say he would do it. But we used to play game with Buzz and make him throw up, so we knew we'd buzz him so bad that he couldn't even breathe. He'd go over the corner and throw up on the ring apron, he just couldn't hang. I mean, if you're going to break somebody, you better be able to hang one before you try to break somebody's leg or arm.
I know he was supposed to be a shooter or something, but man,
Supposed to be. Well, he was a tough guy. I mean, there ain't no doubt about it. But was he a Jack Brisco category? No, and he wasn't close to mine either. Patting myself on the back.
I was going to do it, so
but he was a tough Southern guy, though.
Well, this will be my last question, then I'll let you go, my friend. When he didn't get the reaction that he hoped for on WTBS, Vince sold the time slot for $1 million and used that money to fund WrestleMania, as we all know. At the time, did you have any inkling that WrestleMania was going to become the global event that it did?
No, it was shortly after that he called me and asked me to jump on board and help him promote some southern cities, because he couldn't get into the southern cities. Because the building manager, they were a tight-knit group too, and they had worked with the NWA, and they were getting 52 weeks out of the year booking in their cities. So then you got this guy coming in and saying, they'll offer you 2 to 4 events a year opposed to 52. Who you going to stay loyal to? You're going to stay loyal to that 52. So he needed somebody local that had a relationship with the building manager. And one thing I got to say too, that Barnett and Crockett's all respected my brother and I, and once again, it's because of that background, being college wrestlers and all that BS, that we were always introduced to the building managers, the high rollers that were coming that night. We were the guys that always did the meet and greet with those guys. So I had formed a relationship with all the building managers in the South here. So when Vince needed help to get into those buildings, Barnett told him, well, Brisco's well thought of by all these building managers. And at last, there was syndication, if a building manager here, there was a group of guys, would be a building manager here, and all the southern states, they all kind of jump from after you get 5 years in this building, you get 4 or 5 in this building, you jump. So there was that chain and there was that organization where they knew us. So once you got your foot into one building, you lived up to your agreements there, and I told Vince, we can't get these buildings offering 2 shows. We got at least minimum 4 and probably 6 shows in some of them. So I went in with the aspect, of course, I promised them 8 instead of 6. And then as we got near the time, I ended up getting those 8 shows for them, opposed it. But they eventually, the buildings come to us. So that's the reason we're down here. We only had not a lot of buildings promoted WrestleMania because we couldn't get into a lot of them. So he was still fighting that when he got it and when he did WrestleMania. But those venues that we did have, they all did great, for WrestleMania.
Okay, guys, we are going to take another break, and we are talking about something that I am passionate about, and I'm sure that a lot of the listeners here are passionate about as well. Food, not just food, great food, and that's exactly what Green Chef provides for you. Fall is my absolute favorite season. Not too hot, not too cold. It's crisp outside. You know that feeling. You come out in the morning, and you're like, ooh, I need a sweatshirt, but in a good way. Like, this is a very cozy fall feeling. And not to mention, you get all those nice warm flavors like pumpkin spice and chili and all the other great things that you get to enjoy with this season. It's the perfect time to reset and bring healthy habits back into focus. And that's exactly what you get with Green Chef. They are the #1 meal kit for clean eating. Green Chef can help you out in a lot of ways, man. Forget all of that running to the grocery store to go and get the right ingredients and making sure that you've got the right spices, measuring out certain quantities of things. Oh man, I don't have any eggs in the house. Forget it. Those days are done because Green Chef does all the hard work for you. And you can enjoy more of that great fall weather with their new Heat and Eat meals, which means you get to enjoy a delicious, wholesome meal in just 3 minutes. These guys are perfect for supporting your wellness journey. Green Chef recipes feature fresh, organic, seasonal produce and 100% responsibly sourced proteins. They're going to help you feel your very best. Green Chef's real, clean ingredients help you build lasting, healthy habits without the hassle. You can enjoy salads in just 5 minutes. Or how about protein-filled breakfasts or nutrient-rich smoothies to fuel your day? Green Chef is ready to nurture your nutritional needs. With 80 plus, let me say that again, if you want to talk about variety, how about 80 plus dietitian approved weekly meal options? Green Chef makes it easy to find meals that fit your lifestyle. You can pick from Mediterranean, gluten-free, plant-based, and protein-heavy, even gut and brain health, and calorie-smart choices too. The recipes change all the time with week-to-week flexibility. You can just adjust your plan to match the mood and your schedule. For me personally, I loved the stuff that my wife and I got here recently. We got Southwest cheesy chicken rice bowls. Absolutely fantastic, unbelievable. We kept the recipe card as we do with all the Green Chef recipes that we get so that we can kind of figure out how to make these on our own. But honestly, I don't even want to do it on my own because, again, with Green Chef, I'm able to cut out the whole running out to the grocery store to get things part of it, which is the most annoying part of all of it. Because, I don't know if you're like me, but I'll go out there. I get too much stuff. I don't get enough stuff. I forget something. It's it's infuriating sometimes to be in the kitchen and try to figure out recipes. That's why I love Green Chef. I love to cook. I don't love figuring out all the portions and everything that I need along the way. So Green Chef makes it nice and easy for me. The other thing that I got to try, and let me tell you, this one is absolutely perfect for the fall season. Italian pork soup with roasted cauliflower. Delicious, filling, wholesome and made with those great ingredients. I mean, you just can't beat the options that Green Chef has for you. And you want to talk about tip of the iceberg? It's like I said, 80 plus dietitian approved weekly options. I mean, like I just named 2 of them. Guys, you've got a whole huge host of foods that you get to go through whenever you try Green Chef. It's time, guys. Let's make this fall your healthiest yet with a little help from Green Chef. Here's what you do. Go to greenchef.com/50snakepit and use our code 50snakepit. You're going to get 50% off your first month and then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. Again, that's code 50snakepit at greenchef.com/50snakepit. I'm telling you guys, I know definitively that you are going to love Green Chef. You're going to love having the opportunity to cook yourself these delicious meals and cut out all the legwork that usually goes into having a high quality meal at home. Make this fall your very best yet with the #1 meal kit for clean eating. We're talking about Balck Saturday in Georgia that took place in July 1984 when Vince McMahon acquired the WTBS time slot. And brother, can you believe it's been 40 years?
I can't, man. God, I remember that day like it was yesterday.
I cannot wait to talk to you about it. You and I have discussed it here before. You know, we did the episode talking about you and Ronnie Garvin. Of course, Mr. Garvin came on and did the podcast with us, which was a blast. And we've talked about your reaction to Vince showing up there. But now, today, we're kind of taking the real deep dive to do more of a definitive edition of what happened there. You know, recently, Gerald Brisco filled in for you while you were in the UK. And that's what Mr. Brisco and I discussed was Balck Saturday. But now we're hitting it again with Jake. So we're going to get 2 kind of perspectives from it, 2 very different perspectives, because Jerry had a stake in Georgia and you were a performer and booker there. So I can't wait to kind of hear what your take is on everything.
Okay.
But, yeah, let's jump into these notes. We want to paint the full picture of this situation. So we're going to do kind of the ultimate deep dive on the subject here. We're going to start in 1982 when Vince Jr. took over the WWF from Vince Sr. The territory system, it was still alive and well, and the promoters operated on the understanding that each territory was independent. The other members of the National Wrestling Alliance would honor the other's territory and not work it, promote, try to hire wrestlers out of it, etc. So Vince Jr. would separate from the NWA and go independent with Titan Sports. So Jake, before Vince Jr. began taking steps to make the WWF a juggernaut in wrestling, would you say, what was your perception of when you thought of New York and the wrestling scene up there?
Well, it was, WWF, and they just kind of did their own thing, man. And it was all good. Everybody else had their territory, had their spots that they hit, and everybody was making money.
Would you say that you viewed that? Because I mean, obviously, in years later, after the Hulkamania craze happened and stuff, it kind of became the place to work. If you want to be relevant in professional wrestling, you've got to go to the WWF. Did you view the WWF and what they had done with Bruno Sammartino and Billy Graham in the same kind of light?
No, I didn't. They were just another territory.
Gotcha. Okay, so even with Bruno, he was like one of the most famous athletes on the face of the planet in his prime. Even with that kind of distinction, it's just like just another territory.
Yeah, it was.
Vince branching off from the NWA is interesting because a lot of folks view the NWA as being kind of similar to the mafia at the time. A lot of power brokers in wrestling who had all the smoke-filled backroom deals, and they would also decide which territory would have the champion, and the WWF would never get a recognized NWA champion in their territory, which has to have played a role in Vince wanting to depart. Would you say it was on your radar that big moves were happening up in New York during this time, or were you just head down working?
I was head down and working, but we were hearing things. And he had already started scalping talent too. So,
did you view the NWA as this kind of infallible force or a mafia of sorts in wrestling?
Yeah, I thought it would last forever.
How much of an understanding? Because for context for the listeners, you're just out there trying to make a damn living. So you're going to whatever territory is paying or wherever you can kind of get it freshened up. How much did you know about kind of like the inner workings of NWA?
I didn't. I mean, I knew some guys had a piece of this or a piece of that, but I didn't know the inner workings at all. You know, I was just there to book, to write television, to direct it, and wrestle. That's plenty on your plate.
Yeah, so like who's focused on the business of the wrestling business when you've got all that kind of shit you're kind of trying to keep up with, right?
You got plenty to take care of your time.
Well, the next big move for Vince was to acquire Southwest Championship Wrestling's time slot which is USA, and made it possible because the Blanchards couldn't afford the $7,000 per week asking price from the network despite excellent ratings, and the promotion would fold completely by 1985. Jake, did you ever work for Joe Blanchard?
Yes, I did.
What was that like?
It was wild. I'll just put it that way. It was wild.
Yeah, hard to paint the picture, but it's kind of like the Wild West in pro wrestling back in those days. Like these promoters kind of got to do whatever the fuck they wanted in their territories, right?
Yeah. Everybody had their own thing. Because it was all local television, you didn't have to worry about exposing anything, you know?
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, his son Tully was going to be the biggest draw in his territory and getting all the money angles. Did you ever get a chance to work with a young Tully?
No, I didn't.
Now, knowing Tully, I know that he's kind of a heel in real life, or at least used to be. But he's a great worker. Do you wish you would have had more opportunities to step in the ring with him?
It would have been awesome, man. We could have had some great matches. But Tully, he was on a fast and furious pace at the time, if you understand my meaning. You know, he had some of the same demons I did, and they were kicking his ass.
Yes. So Tully certainly had his fair share of struggles. He has, fully recovered and found God, and a very different man by all accounts nowadays than what he used to be. Well, you got to spend some time around him in AEW. Would you say that you and Tully are buddies?
Oh, yeah.
Now, at the time, Vince, as I said, he's kind of putting in the legwork to get all these TV spots. Did anybody put together at the time what Vince was up to with these television stations?
I don't think anybody did. I think everybody thought that the territory they were in was going to be okay. I guess we were kind of blind sheep, just following the leader. And of course, the promoter, he's talking his side up. He doesn't want to lose anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So he's talking his side up about new things are coming down the pike. Don't worry about it. We got this. Which is all bullshit.
It seems like everybody back in those days they were content to keep doing business the way that they had been doing business instead of trying to evolve like Vince, right?
Right. Nobody's seen the possibilities or the big picture. The big picture now, man, is not how many people are watching your television. It's how much product are you selling.
Yep.
That's where the money's at. So nobody did that. Nobody had figures, wrestling figures or dolls or whatever you want to call them. It was all very small time bullshit.
One of the biggest travesties I've heard about in wrestling is, with as hot as the Four Horsemen became in Crockett's territory, they never had merchandise. Or if they did, it was like a shirt. I think they made Four Horsemen vitamins at one point, and that was like about it. And it just kind of goes to show, like, if Vince McMahon had owned the Four Horsemen, can you imagine how much he would have merchandised them?
Oh, yeah, he merchandised the shit out of them, man. Are you kidding?
I mean, we're talking about a guy who made Jake the Snake pencils and shampoo bottles and
bedding.
Your face was all over the place back in those days.
Yeah, it was, man. It was all sorts of stuff, man. People bring stuff up to me, want me to sign it, and I go, my God, what is this? Something else they were putting out.
I'm surprised they didn't end up making Jake the Snake condoms, right? It's just kind of a natural fit with the snake.
Dark. Yeah. Why not?
Man, missed opportunity even by Vince back then.
You could have called them cumsicles.
All right, coming soon to One True Sport, our merchandise page. Jake the Snake Cumsicles.
Yeah, man. You get a freshman too.
You got to pay a little extra, but Jake will hook you up with a freshman.
Strawberry, banana, chocolate. Oh, yeah.
Well, you know, I never know where our podcasts are going to go. Talking about cumsicles is not on the radar today.
No, that's not good. I'm sure I'll hear about that.
That's all right. The dirt sheets can cover it. That'll be, I can't imagine just somebody trying to spin that to their editor. So good luck out there, dirt sheet writers.
Yeah.
Looking back on it with perspective now, do you resent that Vince's moves kind of put an end to the territories, or do you respect the fact that this guy kind of bet on himself and won big time?
Oh, I definitely resented it, man, because it put a lot of people out of work.
Yep.
They give them jobs too. I get that, but it put a lot of wrestlers out of work. And in the territories, man, that's where you learned. It takes time to become a great wrestler. That's the problem today. These young kids get into wrestling, and after a month in a training or a year in a training camp, they're expected to go out and perform at a high level. It's just impossible to do it right anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's cheating your way to the top.
And, to Jake's point, nowadays it's like something like a year in training and, okay, this kid's ready to make his debut. And back in the day, Jake was kind of thrust into the ring early on in his career, but he had the opportunity to learn. He bounced from territory to territory. You started your career in 1974, and you said you didn't really start to really kind of get it until you were in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that was 4 years later in 1978. So, I mean, like, in theory, 4 years moving around the territories, and then finally, like, the light bulb goes on. Man, it's a whole new world in wrestling now, isn't it?
Damn sure is, man.
All right, guys, we are going to do a break to talk about a sponsor that I am absolutely obsessed with. I've talked about these guys before. I'm going to be talking about them again because these guys provide boots like none I have ever seen or put on my feet before. Brunt Work boots have eliminated sacrificing comfort for durability. They are changing the game. It used to be if they felt good, they didn't last. And if they lasted, they would wreck your feet. Well, Brunt got tired of that BS, so they built tough boots that feel great from day one. There is no break-in period, no more sore feet whenever you take off your boots. I know that whenever I would get a new pair of boots, I couldn't wait to take them off my feet, and then the minute you did, it felt like you were taking clamps off your feet. Not anymore, pal. Brunt is providing some of the best work boots on the face of the planet, certainly the best that I've ever used, and I'm a guy who uses work boots all the time. I've mentioned it here on the show before. I come from the mountains of Pennsylvania, up in the Allegheny National Forest. You needed good work boots if you were going to be getting around out in that area, and I would go through them constantly. Well, let me say, my Brunt work boots not only are very, very comfortable right out of the box, none of that break-in period that we talked about, but also they last. I've had my Brunt work boots for quite a while now. They look great. They feel great. They are made with quality materials, and it shows. Their founder, Eric Gerard, grew up blue-collar and started Brunt Workwear after his friends in the trades kept telling him how these big brands had stopped listening and hadn't changed in like 100 years. They had sold out to become fashion brands. His buddies encouraged him to start a brand built for them, and that's why all Brunt products are named after the guys that he grew up with, real, hardworking tradesmen. It's not just about style, it's not just about comfort. They provide you with waterproof. They provide you with safety toe, soft toe, pull-on, or lace-up. They've got options that can handle whatever job site you're walking into. And by the way, Brunt does something that not a lot of companies are doing anymore. They stand behind what they make. You can wear them to work, and if they're not right for you, send them back. I mean, I'm trying to think of a company that does that off the top of my head, and I can't think of them. That is a company that believes in their product, and for good reason. I personally got the Marin boots, and they were unbelievably comfortable right out of the box. I've got really wide feet. I was just born that way. Crazy, ridiculously wide feet. Not even a good swimmer, so I didn't even get any of the benefits out of having these wide feet. The only thing I got was making it really, really difficult to find shoes that fit me without pinching me or making me uncomfortable. Well, let me say, broke out these Marion work boots, took them out of the box, put them on my feet, and bam, instantly comfortable. I'm walking around my house like, holy smokes, is this going to be a permanent fixture in my life? And I can say that beyond the shadow of a doubt, I am always going to be buying Brunt work boots because I like durability, I like comfort, and I love the style that they have. I've said it here before. I'm wearing these, you know, to get stuff done, but I'm also wearing them just because they look cool. I actually just went back to my hometown up in the Allegheny Mountains not too long ago. I brought my Brunt work boots with me. I wore them the whole time I was up there and got a ton of compliments. I mean, Brunt has covered every single base. They look cool. They feel great. You just can't beat them. Plus, by the way, Brunt isn't just about work boots. They also offer a full range of high-performance gear built for tough jobs. We're talking about heavy-duty work pants and weather-resistant jackets. Dude, Brunt designs durable, reliable workwear to keep you protected and productive in any condition. Just like you, Brunt was tired of the workwear brands out there cutting corners. You deserve better. You work too hard to be stuck in uncomfortable boots that don't hold up. So Brunt did you a solid, dude. They built something better. Boots that are insanely comfortable and built for any job site. For a limited time, our listeners get $10 off at Brunt when you use code SNAKE at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com, use that code SNAKE, and you're good to go. After you place your order, they're going to ask you where you heard about Brunt. Do us a favor, tell them that we're the ones that sent you. Helps Jake and I out while you're helping yourself out with a good pair of boots. Again, right now, this is a limited time offer. Our listeners get $10 off at Brunt when you use code SNAKE at checkout. Just visit bruntworkwear.com, use that code SNAKE, and you are good to go on a boot brand that I absolutely stand behind. I know that you're going to love them just like I do. On top of that, you guys were having something like a couple hundred matches a year at a minimum, probably closer to like 300 matches over the course of a year, right?
Probably 320, 330.
So you guys are putting in all that work. Nowadays, indie guys, it's like you might maybe get 2 gigs a week, something like that.
Yeah. It's great.
Kind of hard to learn your craft. It's good in that people aren't beating up their bodies as much, so that's why you're seeing guys who can kind of last in wrestling a whole lot longer. But man, it's a little bit of the art is being lost.
Yeah, the art is totally lost. Totally lost.
Nowadays, the network is paying the wrestling company to have the product. So, you know, the Blanchards and their issue having to pay $7,000 per week. That's gone. You know, currently the WWE is multiple contracts and the hundreds of millions of dollars for their product on Fox, USA, and soon enough Netflix. AEW, for its part, is also under a huge contract for Warner Brothers. So, man, things have certainly changed, haven't they?
Yeah, in a big way.
Again, it's like, I guess it's ultimately a good thing because this opens the door for boys to get guaranteed contracts whenever the TV company is paying the wrestling company. But yeah, I don't know. It's again, it's pluses and minuses. More opportunity to make money, less opportunity to hone your skills.
Yeah.
So Jake, I know that you would help produce that hype video of yourself that we spoke about here before with Pink Floyd and, you know, the plane crash and stuff, which is great stuff. And of course, you'd also hold office type roles in multiple organizations, including Georgia, Mid-South, and the WWF later in 1996. Right. How much of the inner workings of wrestling and network relationships and all that sort of thing were you privy to?
Nothing to do with the networks.
Okay.
You know, my thing was just creating product. That's all I did.
So,
create product.
Your job was strictly TV. You weren't thinking at all about like network relationships or any of that kind of upper level stuff.
Absolutely not. Nothing to do with merchandising, nothing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your role as booker in Georgia. We mentioned the great story before about Jerry Brisco offering you the book during a match in the Omni back in February of 1984. So you've been in the role for about 5 months by the time Vince comes stomping into the picture. Jake, it makes me wonder, what was it like balancing being an active wrestler and being a booker for the first time in your career here in Georgia?
I found it very easy. You know, I was surrounded by some good talent. You know, I had Ronnie Garvin to work with. I had the Road Warriors out there producing. I had King Kong Bundy. Yeah, we had some guys that could go. Brad Armstrong, Tim Horner.
You know, all those names that you've mentioned, and there's more. You know, guys like DiBiase was in the territory at the time. I know that Jim Duggan would swing through, like guys that you know and have become friends with and are your peers in Georgia. But now, you know, maybe their perception of you has changed a little bit because here you are in a whole new position on top of being, you know, a top draw in the territory. Would you say it impacted the way you were treated by the boys at all?
Yeah, it did, unfortunately. You know, they started buddying up to me a little bit too much.
Mm.
You know, felt like my shorts were being pulled down from behind, you know.
So with the idea being like, hey, if we kiss Jake's ass a little bit, maybe he'll hook us up with some great creative.
Better be a nose, nothing else.
Now, what about as far as like your scheduling was concerned? What did being a booker change for you as far as having to be in meetings, your work schedule, the timing of when you'd arrive in towns?
Well, arriving in towns was pretty simple. I needed to be there an hour before.
Mm.
So that was no problem. But as far as booking it went, I refused to go to the office.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't get anything done at the office.
Why is that?
You got too many people aggravating you. Yeah, if you were alone, you could actually think and do your process and write things out. But if you have somebody coming in the room every 15, 20 minutes, wanting to talk to you or wanting to see what you're doing or what's going on, or there's a phone call for you, Jake on line 2, there's a phone call on line 4, you know, you don't get anything done.
Mm. Not to mention, you know, Ole Anderson is part owner of the territory at the time. So, like, if you're in the office, that means you got to spend time around him a lot. And I'm sure that he'd be one of those guys coming, you know, knock on your door and asking you a shitload of questions and stuff, right?
No, on the door, he just screamed.
Oh my God.
You know, he was a yeller.
Well, you know, obviously you love climbing into the ring, but I know that you have a lot of passion for booking as well. So, Jake, I've got to ask, which would you say scratched the itch for you more?
Booking.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Performing was too easy for me.
Hmm.
I found performing just really easy.
So you like the challenge of being a booker?
Yeah, I love the challenge of booking it and creating new things and watching things come to fruition, painting a picture and drawing the lines and putting the color into it. And yeah, man, that's what it's all about.
So one of the things that I hear a lot from guys in the business and guys who wound up booking, guys like Kevin Sullivan and Eric Bischoff and a few of the other guys who had the opportunity to book creative, is how frustrating it could be because like you come up with an idea and then some motherfucker gets hurt, or like some guy comes to you and says like, this doesn't work for me, brother. Or what was that experience like for you?
That sucked. Because you would have something painted in your mind that was so beautiful and so good and so with it. And you know it's going to make money. And you get somebody that's home. It's like, oh, I don't get it, man. I don't want to do that. Or they just wouldn't put the right emphasis on the right times in the match or the angle.
Mm.
You know, they wouldn't do the right spin on it. It's the fine tuning of the stuff that makes your money.
Can you think of anybody in particular who was kind of a thorn in your side when it came to poo-pooing the shit?
King
Kong Bundy.
Yes. He can fuck up a wet dream.
So you'd come to him with creative and he would just like shit on it?
Oh, he just shit all over it in the ring.
So you'd give him good creative, and he'd say, "Yeah, no problem," and then he'd just go fuck it all up.
Just fuck it all up completely.
Now, what about guys bitching? Who would you say was the loudest bitcher when it came to creative?
Bundy.
Him, boy, this guy is tough to deal with.
Yeah, he was.
Well, just before you were made Booker in Georgia, Hulk Hogan defeated Sheiky Baby in January '84 and turned wrestling on its head. And this, of course, is after Vince pulled Hogan away from Vern Gagne's AWA, among other talents who he would tempt away from that territory. I know that promoters at the time looked at it as being underhanded, and maybe it was, but as a wrestler seeing it happen, do you view it as underhanded or view it as an opportunity you could leverage?
Well, I viewed it as underhanded, but I certainly saw the good that could come from it too, though,
Yeah.
So it was a tough time to be in wrestling. It really was.
You and I have talked about money here a few times before, and you've kind of let loose on what you were being paid in places like Dallas and Charlotte and stuff.
Yeah.
If you don't mind my asking, Jake, what kind of money were you making in Georgia? Was it the best of your career up to that point?
The best of my career up to that point, yeah. I was doing $3,000 a week.
Okay, $3,000 a week is not too shabby.
Not too shabby.
And so you're making all this money, but again, there's no retirement plan in wrestling, and that's why I think a lot of guys are like, okay, how can I make more? Because it's again, you don't have health insurance. We talked about this last week. There's no health insurance. You got a family. It's like, hey, things are great now. Are things going to be great in 10 years when I'm only 35 years old?
Yeah. Not for the faint of heart.
Now, do you think it would have been possible for Vince to go national without Hulk Hogan? Could somebody else have filled that role?
Sure.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So it's just more about the way that Vince booked him.
It's the whole thing of having the TV in the right positions to blow it out.
It's like the chicken or the egg argument a lot of times with Hogan and Vince. It's like, I made him. No, I made him. That's sort of like the argument that the two of them have. So you're on Vince's side when it comes to that.
Yeah, TV made Hulk Hogan. TV.
To be honest, it's hard to argue that perspective. Vince had acquired all this TV time, so it's like you just feature a guy in front of that audience, and who knows?
You feature him, you tell the whole world he's the best there is, the best there was, the best there'll ever be. Sorry about that, Brett. But yeah, you promote him as that, and pretty soon the people are agreeing with you because every time they turn around, they hear your name.
Plus his reach with merchandising and stuff like that. Like all of a sudden, Hulk Hogan's face is fucking everywhere. So I mean, of course, people are going to say, "Boy, that's a big star."
Yeah, it's not the mustache that got him over.
Or the skullet.
Yeah.
Well, back to Georgia. Apparently, Vince had once tried to purchase the WTBS time slot direct from Ted Turner and was outright refused. Jake, during your time in the territory, did you ever spend any time around Ted Turner?
No, not at all.
Never. You've never crossed paths with him?
Nope.
Interesting, because I hear all the time that Ted was one of those guys who was a wrestling fan and loved wrestling. So I would have thought he would have been in the studio as often as he could be.
No, I got a letter from him.
Really?
Yeah, I blew my nose on my opponent one time. And I got a letter from him saying if we ever saw that again, it'd be the last time anybody'd see me.
Whoa.
Yeah. I guess he was pretty serious about it.
Boy, I wonder how he would have reacted to a lot of the stuff that was going on during the Attitude Era then.
Oh, my God. He lost his mind.
I mean, Val Venus got his dick chopped off at one point, so things were going off the rails.
It was a good thing, though.
Couldn't terrorize anybody with that thing anymore.
No.
Well, now we're kind of getting into the meat of the podcast here in the events that led to Balck Saturday. And when Turner refused Vince, he did not give up, but instead he came directly to the owners. Most wrestling fans know that Jim Barnett struck a deal with Vince with the approval of Jack and Jerry Brisco, who were co-owners of the territory. On both Dark Side of the Ring and when he filled in as a host here on this program, Gerald stated that one of the deciding factors for him and Jack to sell was they had not received any of their dividends from the company. And the heat for that was on Ole Anderson, the other owner of the company who was in control of the revenue. Jake, how much of this backstage, behind the scenes heat did you hear about?
I got nothing.
Really?
I got nothing, man. I told you I didn't go to the office.
So you're in a great spot then, because you get to kind of do all the things that you love to do, and you don't have to deal with the fucking politics.
I don't have to deal with the bullshit.
So I would imagine that being a booker, though, you get to hear some things that maybe the other boys didn't get to hear. Was there any indication that the Briscoes and Barnett were unhappy with Ole and the way he was running the day-to-day operations?
Oh yeah, they were very unhappy.
Obviously, the Briscoes thought a lot of you because they put you in the booker position. Were you pretty close with Jack and Jerry both?
Not really. They just had a high opinion of what I thought and what I could do.
Well, let's talk about some of what was happening in front of the camera for you during this period. You're still embroiled in a red-hot feud with Ronnie Garvin for the TV title. You won the title back from Ronnie on June 17th, 1984, but the title was immediately vacated because you used a foreign object to win the match. And then on July 1st, which is 2 days ago as we're recording this, 40 years ago, Ronnie would beat you for the belt in a really bloody battle. And if folks don't believe me about how bloody it was, check out our YouTube right now. I've got a picture pulled up, and both of these guys are absolutely covered in blood as Ronnie is, waving the title that he just won. So Jake, this felt like it could be the blow-off to the long angle between you and Ronnie. And I know I'm asking you to look back 40 years, but before Vince came and fucked everything up, do you remember what the creative was for you moving forward from Ronnie?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was going to turn babyface.
No shit.
Yeah, and go against the Road Warriors.
Okay, that had kind of been teased because of you said something while Apter was interviewing you about how like you were the real star.
Yeah.
Okay, see, now that could have been a lot of fun. What made you decide though that it was the right time to turn you babyface with all the heat that you were getting at the time?
Well, it's more about it was more about capitalizing off the Road Warriors.
Ah.
They were the stars of the company. I mean, as hot as I was, it didn't really matter because I was going to have Ronnie Garvin split off with DiBiase and Brad Armstrong.
Jake, I'm pretty blown away by the fact that you remember so much of this booking. Did you keep any of the booking logs?
No, it was like yesterday.
Pretty incredible. So you know you're remembering exactly where you were ready to go 40 years ago, which is, I mean, to me is really unique. And that's the one thing that's always stuck out about me when it came to you and your booking is it's funny because I think it was like February 5th or something, 1984. They made you the booker, and then right after that, you lost the TV title to Ronnie Garvin. So it's like you were thinking about what was right for business, not what was right for Jake the Snake.
That's right. That's right.
Which, in theory, if this is a company you work for, what's best for business is what's right for Jake the Snake. So you were just doing the right thing.
I just kept moving in a positive direction.
You'd go on to have rivalries with the likes of Andre, DiBiase, Savage, and so many others on a much larger stage. Where would you say that you put the rivalry between you and Ronnie Garvin and on the all-time list from your career?
Right up there at top.
Really?
Yeah. It's probably Ronnie Garvin, Steamboat, Rick Rude, DiBiase.
Wow. So Ronnie Garvin is number one.
Yeah.
Says a lot about him and you and the chemistry you guys had. Let's get to the big day. July 14th, 1984. Vince is at TV and he makes it publicly known that the WWF will be broadcast on the Superstation time slot. When did it become public knowledge for the talent and employees that Vince had purchased the time slot?
That day.
When he arrived.
When he walked in there.
How much heat would you say Jack and Jerry had with you and with the other boys for selling their fucking rights?
I don't think there was a whole lot of heat there. I know I had none. I mean, I understood. If I wasn't getting my fucking money, I'd be wanting to do something else too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about business.
That was it. And Jack and Jerry had families of their own to take care of, and they were just doing what they had to do because they weren't getting what they were due. Jake, you had a hell of a reaction. You tell Vince to shove it up his ass, and it's a great moment that we explored on a Georgia episode before. What do you remember about reactions from the other talents when Vince is there in the building?
I don't remember because I was so fucking mad, man. I just stormed out of there.
There's a great story out there about what Ole had to say to Vince and Linda McMahon that day. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Apparently, Vince came up to Ole and said, "Ole, this is my wife Linda. I'd like to introduce you to her." And he said, "Vince, why don't you go fuck yourself? And Linda, go fuck yourself too." Something to that effect.
Wow.
Pretty stiff from Ole.
Yeah.
All right, last question. If you could transport yourself back in time to that age, that moment, Jake, how do you think you would handle the situation with your current perspective?
Oh, I would have definitely sat down and talked to Vince.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What changes your mind?
Well, just seeing where it all went.
Right.
That was the beginning and the end, all in the same moment.
In theory, if you had kind of buddied up to Vince under those circumstances, we could have seen Jake at WrestleMania 1, and who knows, maybe the Snake